there are fundamental issues here that has to do with what will be the lifespan of, or the spine of the 2019 elections. If the president is seen as shying away from this, it does make him look like he doesn't have the interest of free and fair elections. That is what he has described.
On the contrary, it is in the interest of free and fair elections that legislative errors and alterations and amendments such as is being proposed today ought to take a more meticulous National Assembly, especially the upper chambers, the Senate, to get itself and its acts together. If for the fourth time, fundamental, cogent, and verifiable errors were found, alterations were made that ought not to be made, as has been pointed out in the present letter, it goes to the issue of the National Assembly itself not wishing Nigerians well by not taking its time to do its own job at its own end properly to bring
Honorable
to the president's
Obon, are you worried that when this last draft that's been sent back was being drafted, people from the executive were present?
Exactly.
Does the executive have any excuse to come back and give excuse of drafting errors?
If there are drafting errors and have been pointed out as in the present case, there are drafting errors clearly pointed out. And in Parliament, you cannot, especially given that this is a legislative bill, it's not an executive bill, it is incumbent on the executive to return that bill for the accurate and proper amendments and alterations.
The critics of this president are saying he's just using technical knockouts for this. And that, look, and you hear what people were saying. Have you heard also that they said that the president is afraid of the electronic transmission of results and the issues of the ballot, the card readers? Those are what the critics and the opposition are saying.
For a man who have been in this national discourse of free and credible elections 4 times, I do think that it would be very unfair to impute to this president any intention to subvert the electoral process by a mere act of legislation initiated by a parliament of 360 members in the green chambers and 109 members in the upper chambers. And you talk about amendment and alterations to which he has insisted Parliament will be held responsible and accountable to the people. And yet, every of these have always been pointed out in writing. Even when they sat back there, they were only offering to themselves what should come out as the legislation at the final draft. But this final draft, I have asked you, read the letter this president has sent back to the National Assembly.
Honorable Frank, get into the conversation.
I think the Honorable is being unfair to the National Assembly. Beyond the executive having its team led by Ita Inang himself, a collegiate that was formed for the purpose of cleaning up the bill as it was first rejected by the president. The civil society was also involved, led by Clement Wanko, and a clean copy was indeed agreed upon by the 3 parties before it was sent to the president for assent. So clearly, what was expected of the president was to assent to it, because all disagreements were settled before the bill was presented to the president. The president clearly, I can only fathom a reason that he is being misadvised by his advisors, and that nothing can be more destructive and tragic to our democracy than what the president is doing now. Because the bill, you just mentioned, the innovations, the amendments that have been put into this bill to ensure that our elections are free, fair, and credible, and that they meet international standards, and that they are unassailable in every way. INEC is a victim in this regard.
How, in what way? If you can mention 1 or 2 ways, do you think that the non-signing of this into law will affect 2019 elections?
Oh, certainly. Right now, the president mentions something about confusion. What could be more confusing? Where votes are uncertain and the elections are totally manipulated and results are rejected. Now, we are dealing now with a debacle of vote buying. The only reason is that INEC has cleaned up the system with some measure of certainty with regards to the use of card readers. And as we speak, when you no longer give that kind of legitimacy as it happened in the case in Rivers State, even though the Supreme Court gave a decision, and that was when it became apparent that there is need for the amendment of the Electoral Act to give credence, to give legitimacy.
Are you saying
to the card
INEC
reader.
will not be able to use the card reader?
No, let me tell you this. INEC will again go back to those dark days of, a high number of litigations with regards to all of its elections. Those were unnecessary. INEC has worked very hard to show that with some measure of cleaning up the electoral process with the use of smart card readers, and then that electronic transmission of election results, those things have come to make our elections are very certain.
As a lawyer, let's conclude on this note. As a lawyer, what option does the National Assembly have?
Oh, clearly, the National Assembly does have the option of overriding the president's veto. And like one has always expected, if not because, and I think politics was being taken too far, when a collegiate was formed between the executive, the civil society, and the National Assembly, if not for that, the National Assembly ought to have done the needful by vetoing the president's, by overriding the president's veto and ensuring that we have an amended electoral act that can give our elections some measure of credibility.
So they can veto the president on it.
Certainly.
Let's close the program now. Honorable Obun, we have about 30 seconds to do that. As it stands right now, this is a big one. Political dimension, legal dimension, perception issues on the president, and albatross.
Clearly, there are divisions within the ranks of the polity, and the political actors are at their game. But I tell you this, like he rightly said, and I agree completely, that the National Assembly has been unable to use its power shows that there is a great crisis even within the National Assembly itself. Secondly, that the card reader, if it has to be the only reason why the National Assembly has to amend this law, ought to have helped INEC by just proceeding only on that one item, clear it up. This would have happened after the first rejection in order not to create the maze and labyrinth of crisis that has engulfed this entire process.
We need to go now, but I must sincerely thank you, my panel tonight on the program. Mr. Frank Tete, a lawyer and rights activist, Honorable Pt.2 Obun, member of the APC, and a former lawmaker. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. So there are several areas that you can look. Electronic transmission of results, the card readers, the incident that happened in Kogi the other time, you remember, where a candidate died in the middle of an election. Those were supposed to be resolved in the electoral amendment bill that's not signed. But we'll see what happens in the coming days. Well, it's a Friday show, and that's where we hang it tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Okibale. Bye-bye.